Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Now, David Haye has explained that Tyson Fury cannot beat Anthony Joshua in the same manner he beat Deontay Wilder. This is what he had to say. If Tyson Fury attacks Anthony Joshua in the same manner he did Wilder, I don't believe it works. He'll be too open, too wide, and someone as fast, athletic, and as skillful as AJ will be able to punch right through the middle and take him out early. So there we go, that is what David Haye has explained about Tyson Fury's chances if he fights the same way as he did against Deontay Wilder. Now I don't believe we can expect to see that kind of performance from Tyson Fury because he knows he's in there with a more rounded fighter this time, because Deontay Wilder, once his right hand was taken away, there was little that he could do. And that is down to Deontay Wilder neglecting certain aspects of boxing, the fundamentals, the footwork, the movement, the positioning, being able to throw a jab. I mean, he's got quite a good jab, but he doesn't necessarily utilize it in the way that he could. So therefore, once his right hand is taken away, Deontay Wilder has nothing to revert to. AJ does. AJ can box, he can move, he can punch as well, he can stand there and trade with his opponent. So Anthony Joshua can put different things in the ring and cause Tyson Fury different problems compared to Deontay Wilder. Wilder has that big right hand, immense power. If he catches anyone, then he's going to at least hurt them or knock them down, sometimes even stop them. I mean, he's done that plenty of times. Against Tyson Fury, that didn't work because Fury knew how to defend against it. He knew also how to ride the shot. So when he got caught, he never got caught clean. Even those big punches in the last round, the right hook, then the left hook, Fury was riding those shots. Even if you see that left hook on his way down, he's riding the shot. He knows how to do that, and that takes a lot of power out of those shots. It's going to be different in there with AJ because AJ doesn't necessarily load up with one big right hand like Wilder does. Wilder seems to bide his time. He'll wait in there. He'll happily be outboxed by lower level oppositions like, say, Gerald Washington. Then eventually the right hand will come because it always does. He's good at setting it up, he's good at finding it, although he doesn't necessarily look brilliant up until that point when that punch does land, and he seems to be able to find that punch. He didn't though with Tyson Fury, or he did, but it didn't work because Tyson Fury has the skill and ability and experience to be able to stay in there after being hurt. Those are things that he has learned during his pro career, things that perhaps Deontay Wilder has neglected. AJ won't load up with one big shot, he will put them together. We've seen him do that. He'll close the distance quick, get on the inside, land shots down to the body and to the head as well, looking to perhaps slow down Tyson Fury, to ensure that Fury doesn't have everything his own way, because if AJ boxes him long, I believe that Tyson Fury will pick him off with the jab. So I think that what AJ will try and do is get close, sit on the chest of Tyson Fury at times, but make sure he is utilising the mid to close distance. It is going to be interesting to see how this fight is fought with regards to distance. Is it going to be long range, close range, or that mid range? I think Tyson Fury will want to keep Anthony Joshua on the outside. He won't want him getting close to him, working down to the body. But AJ needs to try and get that distance closed so that he can land his shots. Otherwise Tyson Fury will attempt to keep him away behind that jab. The interesting thing about both of these fighters is they are good at long range. We've seen that AJ in the Ruiz fight, we've seen that Tyson Fury in the Klitschko fight. They are good at range. They can both fight at mid range, but for two big guys, they can fight and trade well on the inside. Tyson Fury against Deontay Wilder, when they got in close in the clinch, Fury had his hips bent and his legs back, so there was space between him and Wilder, allowing him to work. Wilder was stood bolt upright, and he did not want to engage in inside fighting. Tyson Fury was the one who wanted to do that, and he was roughing Deontay Wilder up on the inside, with long arms, being 6'9", making that very difficult for many fighters to do who are taller. It's not always easy for a taller man to fight on the inside and be the inside fighter in a fight with someone who is smaller. I mean, look at Ruiz, he's a smaller guy, so he needs to get on the inside because he doesn't have the height and the reach advantage his opponent does have. So the distance is very important for Ruiz to ensure he's fighting at that mid to close range. Then sometimes you look at other fighters like, say, even Lawrence Okolie. He's long and he has a good jab, he boxes well at range, but on the inside he seems to only be able to hold. I would like to see him use the inside fighting game a bit more and learn that, because he will definitely need it going to world level. but that's another thing entirely. That is an example of someone who struggles to fight on the inside. Tyson Fury isn't one of those guys. He has a good inside fighting game. He even explained that to David Haye when they were going to fight. He said, "I'm one big inside fighter." And where Tyson Fury is taller, longer, maybe stronger at times than some of his opponents, definitely heavier most of the time, when that happens, he can trade on the inside. Then he can wrap them up, hold them, lean on them, make it rough, make it tough in there for his opponent. Make it hard because he can work when he wants to work, but also he can just lean on his opponent, using his weight to slow down and tire the legs of his opposition. I'm not necessarily believing that that is what will happen in there with AJ, because I believe that Anthony Joshua has good footwork, good positioning and good movement. He's explosive, he is able to get into range and out of range quite quickly. So I don't think that Tyson Fury will be able to catch him and hold him too much on the inside. That is definitely something that AJ won't want to happen, and I really can't see it happening. I can see this fight being contested more at the mid-range. I think that they won't want to be too far away from one another, which is an incredible distance to fight at, but that's the way I think it will go. I don't believe that Tyson Fury will necessarily box him long, but I don't believe he will use the same tactics as he did against Deontay Wilder. Having said that, he won't want to go for a back foot performance and allow AJ to come forwards, because AJ does thrive when he is able to put pressure on his opponent, and I believe that he's fast enough and has good enough combinations to catch Tyson Fury at some point. So Fury at places will want to fight fire with fire. He won't want Anthony Joshua to have his own way with regards to pressuring the fight and dictating the distance the fight is fought at. Fury will want to implement his own game plan as well, and I've said it many times, I think that what Tyson Fury will try and do is make sure that Anthony Joshua is frustrated early on. So keep moving, keep jabbing, keep pawing, moving down to the body as well, but he will want AJ to feel like he's behind going into the mid-rounds, so AJ feels like he has to chase the fight. When AJ starts doing that, he will look to start breaking him down, because AJ will be putting a lot into those mid-rounds. It's going to be interesting the game plans that both of them have, and I do not believe that they will fight the same way they have done before. I mean, everyone says that there's a new AJ now. It's the same AJ, he just uses different game plans for different opponents, different horses for different courses. Same as Tyson Fury. His performance in the second Deontay Wilder fight does not mean this is a new Tyson Fury. It's the same one as before, just using different aspects of the sport in order to get the victory. Only elite level fighters are able to do that, and both of these guys have started to do that during their careers. There is the guarantee that both of them are in their primes going into this fight. Now, let's talk about Canelo, because he recently spoke about his fight in 2013 against Floyd Mayweather. This is what he had to say when reflecting on that fight. "When I fought Floyd, I was 23. I have grown so much. I needed more experience, maturity. I don't take that fight like a loss. I take that fight like a lesson. I learned from that fight." So there we go, that is what Canelo has said in reflecting on that loss to Floyd Mayweather. And going in there at just 23 years old against one of the top 10 fighters ever. I mean, I think we have to give Floyd Mayweather that at least. So he's going in there at 23 years old with that kind of fighter. It takes someone who's extremely motivated to do that at that age. Because at that point, Canelo was what, 41, 42, maybe even 43-0. He was undefeated, he had a lot of fights. He didn't necessarily need to fight Floyd Mayweather, but he wanted to because it was a big opportunity. It's just like fighters now, getting the chance to go and face Canelo. I mean, look at Callum Smith, look at Billy Joe Saunders. They were both in their prime when they got to fight Canelo. Canelo wasn't. He was a couple of years before his prime when he went in there with a fighter who was #1 at that point, pound for pound. And it's amazing at that young age to be in there competing with someone like Floyd Mayweather. Many fighters are just turning over to professional, or at least just coming through the domestic stage at that point, whereas he was at the top of his game, fighting at Floyd Mayweather, even though he wasn't necessarily ready or mature enough for that fight. I mean, had he fought him in his prime, perhaps the result could have been different. But that was the only Canelo that Floyd Mayweather could fight. He couldn't fight him now because things are different. 23-year-old Canelo was the one who was in front of him. That was the fight. That was the only fight he could take. He couldn't wait for Canelo to mature a little bit more. He just took him when he could. And, I mean, boy, is that victory looking good now for Floyd Mayweather, because look at what Canelo has been able to do following that loss. I mean, that's his only loss in his career. And look at the fights that Canelo has been in. I can even recall the fight week for this fight. I remember I was still at school when we were doing ICT, and when we were supposed to be doing web design, I was actually looking up things about this fight, and all of the things that Floyd Mayweather was saying he was going to do, and the things that Canelo said he was going to do. The arguments about weight, because they said that they would have taken the fight at 154. Floyd Mayweather's team, Leonard Ellerbe, actually said that they would have taken the fight at 154, but they put in the contract 152 just to bring it Canelo down, just to edge it a little bit, and Canelo agreed to it. Those were things that they got put in there, but had Canelo not agreed to 152, they would have still taken the fight. Now, that was a mind game in itself, because that made Canelo think, I could have had this fight at 154, so I'm draining down 2 more pounds, when maybe I didn't have to, because he even explained, he's not getting the better of this deal, he's gaining 5 pounds. There is a video on YouTube, I think now, of them going back and forth about that, of him watching Leonard Ellerbe say that, and he said, no, he has to gain 5 pounds, he is the one who's worse off in that deal. So it was almost like a mind game in of itself, at just having that there, and that was just the way that Floyd Mayweather was able to get into the heads of his opponents before fights, and in the ring, look what he was able to do as well. But let's also look at how Canelo has improved since that fight. Guys, anyway, what are your thoughts on this? Pick your favourite subject and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Also leave a like and grab that subscribe button. Thanks guys.